Hi, and welcome to this new episode of In Search for Courage and Meaning. I'm Abby of Abi Keene Healing. I'm a body worker, a healer, coach, and mainly a human being in search of meaning in this crazy world and the courage to live authentically and from the heart. And today I have with me here Benjamin Fox. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, my pleasure, Abby. Thank you for having me on as your guest today.
And what would you like us to know about you?
What would I like you to know about me? What a question. I could probably answer that question in so many different ways, on depending on the day. I think what I would say, I think what I want to share, the one thing, the most important thing I would want to say about me is the thing that really brings me to my happy place, like my
Mhm.
happiest place as a human being, as a person. And that is, well, there's really two things. One would be being in my garden
Mm.
and being like in my garden with my hands in the soil amidst the plants. And that is a super happy place. I mean, I think that extends to all of nature, but my garden is very accessible and it's a kind of daily presence for me. And then the other happy place would be when I'm in a very real conversation with
Mm.
another person that gets beneath the surface of things and gets at something meaningful. I mean, meaning and courage. I think it takes courage to have those kinds of conversations with other human beings. And I particularly love having them. I love being able to be real and to make space for other people to also be real. And so I do that in my work, but I just like to do it in my life wherever I can. So I think that's what I would share about myself to start. Yeah.
And I feel like you just summarized my YouTube channel because that's exactly it. And thank you so much for saying that. I mean, yes, I share that with you where
Mm.
I love to have those conversations where we get to go under the surface. And I hope that there's value for people who might be watching this to help them go under their own surface as well and
Yeah.
start to feel comfortable there.
Yeah. And Abby, there's another piece to that, which is that in the being real, I get to learn something new about myself
Hmm.
and I get to learn something about the other person that I didn't know. And if I could like just give you a quick little example of this,
Yeah.
I have a dear, dear friend, a woman who I've known for probably 3 decades, and we meet once a month on Zoom. We don't live geographically close to one another, and we just check in for an hour every month. It's like it's in our calendar. And just yesterday we were talking, and I for a number of months have been having just some feelings coming up about the connection between us that I haven't been speaking to. And it was creating kind of a wedge in my
Mm.
connection with her. And I was making up stories about her in relationship to me. Anyway, we had a real conversation about it yesterday. And it brought up a lot of feelings for her, for me. But because we've known each other for so long, and I think because we're both pretty adept at having these kinds of conversations, we were able to move through all of those feelings pretty efficiently. And it totally, and I did learn something about myself. I mean, I learned about the ways that I make up stories when I'm not being honest about my feelings in relationship to other people. And I learned a lot about her. And then by the end of the call, I felt like our connection was completely revitalized. Like we were back in sync with each other. And I felt the love in my heart that I always have felt with her. So it was a great example for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for saying that. And I know exactly what you mean. I feel like if we open that place of friction of like, 'cause it sounds like something came up for you guys and actually, rather than not face it or shove it under the carpet or pretend that it's not, or just got like withdraw from each other, it's like you go through that little storm, you come out on the other side, and it transforms. You're like at the new level of the relationship.
Yeah, it's like the energy is flowing again. It's like
Yeah.
the energy is moving again, and there's a back and forth. There's a resonance. It's so exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, instead of persisting in trying to maintain some kind of like fictional appearance of harmony and niceness, it's we're actually in harmony. So by being willing to face the stuff that was coming up for us, the emotional stuff that was coming up for me. So
Yeah. And
yeah,
it sounds like you're describing kind of life in one's, journey, where when we tackle, how we tackle the difficulties, and how we move through it and how we come out, whether it's in relationship or just within ourselves and our own difficulties. The difference
yeah,
between the mask and faking it and actually being real inside of it.
yeah. I mean, and that's a great point that you make, because I do think that skill begins with us. Like, we have to be willing to look at the places inside ourselves that we're maybe afraid. I mean, that's where the courage comes in, right? That we're
Yeah.
afraid to look at, that might feel uncomfortable, parts of ourselves. So yeah, and I, that was a piece of it yesterday in bringing that up with her. So for sure, yeah.
And so, since you brought it up, um, the places that are difficult, and what are you working on now, if you don't mind my asking?
What I'm working on, I mean, my work is as a community leader. Lori, my wife, my partner, and I have a community called A New Possibility. Lori, for years, has worked as a practitioner of Chinese medicine, and she works with depth psychology. The focus of her practice has always been on working with people around emotional, spiritual, psychological issues, using Chinese medicine in that way. I have been a licensed body worker for a number of decades, and I'm a evolutionary astrologer. So together, we've created a body of work that we call alchemical healing, and we've founded a community to explore alchemical healing. We offer education on alchemical healing. We wrote a book about it. And what I'm working on right now within that community, I mean, always I'm working on simply cultivating the connections within the community. And in specifically, I'm working on, and this is something that you'll appreciate, I think. I'm working on bringing my own voice as an astrologer to the community in a more direct way. So
Yeah.
I started a space within A New Possibility called Astrology for Everyone. And it's a place for us to learn about ourselves through the lens of astrology, to do that kind of inner work using the lens of astrology as a tool. So that's what I'm working on right now.
So I want to highlight something, and you said astrology for everyone, and I want to highlight the for everyone
Yeah,
and ask you, what is that about?
great question. I mean, for me, I want to, my commitment as an astrologer, and when I work with people, is to kind of demystify the language in some ways. I mean, it is a symbolic language, and you do have to learn the vocabulary to speak astrology, but anyone can do it. Anyone can do that with a bit of commitment, and some curiosity and interest. And I'm fairly, I'm passionate about the ability for astrology to serve us as a tool for knowing ourselves in a much deeper way. And I want for everyone to have that opportunity if it's
Mm.
something that calls to them.
Yeah.
Often I think in the astrology world, the model is there's the astrologer, there's the professional astrologer who knows how to read the signs, who knows how to read the symbols. And there's this tendency to, to almost put them up on a pedestal. They become
Mhm.
like a guru, and people follow them. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, people spend lifetimes becoming really good at what they do, and there's lots of meaning in learning from people who do that. But I think my essential nature is that I'm for those who speak astrology. I mean, I have Sun and Moon in Aquarius, and my tendency is towards empowering everyone
Mhm.
to be able to use these tools for themselves to gain deeper insight. I don't want necessarily for people to have to come to me to get the answers. It's much more satisfying to me when I can give someone the tools to begin to explore it themselves. And then we can be in conversation and dialogue about how that's playing out and how that's working in a person's life. And
Yeah.
I bring my insights, but they bring their experience, their life experience. So that's what the For Everyone is about. I want astrology to be accessible to everyone who wants it. Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, what you're saying is such an important point on so many levels and in different kind of ways. I mean, even in my own practice, I no longer do just body work because I don't want to fix anybody, or have that way of people coming and do my shoulder, my neck. I want to empower people to fix themselves, and actually not fix, but accept and love and appreciate and value and bring forth, et cetera, but not to do it for anybody, but to show people that they can do that for themselves.
Beautiful. Right.
And then it's
And
theirs to keep.
it's theirs to keep. And it's a much more interesting relationship for you, right? As a practitioner, when the person who is coming to you is engaged in their own healing process. I mean, I think that as opposed to thinking Abby is going to fix me, or Abby is going to give me the answers, or if I don't have Abby, what's going to happen to me?
Yeah.
It's just more exciting. It's more interesting. And I find it's the same. Like my favorite clients are the ones who they have that curiosity, and they're like, how do I learn more? Where can I learn more about this? And
Yeah.
then we check in and we have ongoing conversations about what they're learning and how it's relevant to their life
Yeah.
as their life is unfolding. Like the shoulder pain, that's something that's speaking to a person, right? And
Right.
trying to give them a message about something about their life. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
And just a short story feels relevant with my own autoimmune that I was diagnosed about 10 years ago, I think, with Hashimoto's, super common among women my age after having kids, stress. And that's when we attack our own thyroid. And for the
Mm,
longest time, I frantically ran around looking for, you know, people to tell me what to do, because I was so
mm,
shocked that I was sick. I mean, I was so healthy. How can I be sick? And I need to figure it out and fix it. And I went and I tried this and I tried this. No, you give me the answer. No, you give me. Maybe they know. Maybe this diet. Maybe that routine. Maybe these supplements. And I think I needed to kind of, like a chicken without a head, have to spin around like that to get to the point of, hold it, I'm constantly looking out of myself for somebody to tell me what to do, for someone
mhm,
to save me, to fix me, to do it for me. Just give me the solution. And I felt like what my illness was saying is, listen to yourself.
mm,
Listen to yourself, listen to all of it. Listen to your body. Does it like this diet? Does it like these supplements? Listen to your body. Why are you attacking yourself? What is not being expressed right here? Um,
right,
so the
right.
richness of actually taking the sort of the power back in, and rather than looking outside for solution, starting to look inside, and not even so much for solutions, but listening to
Mm,
myself.
yeah. And then I have to ask, I mean, how are you doing with the Hashimoto's? Like,
So Hashimoto's is still here and manageable, but I feel like it has become my friend,
yeah,
and sort of
yeah.
an ally that is constantly keeping me honest, because it's always helping me question,
Yeah.
am I being in alignment? Am I being in my truth? Am I being self-honoring? Am I treating myself nice? Am I going back to the habits of overdoing and
Yeah.
overgiving? And
So
so,
it's like it's a companion and a teacher in a certain way. A
yep.
friend, a companion, a teacher. Yeah. Yeah, Abby, the subtitle to The Alchemy of Inner Work is, let me see if I can remember it, a guide to turning illness and suffering into true health and well-being. That's the subtitle of the book that Lori and I wrote. And I think your example, it's a beautiful example of how illness can serve as a bridge or a doorway into a different way of life, like a completely different attitude towards your life that ultimately empowers you to move more fully into who you are,
Yeah.
who you are. And I think, I know a little bit about what your journey over this last year or two, and I know you're doing that. I mean, this podcast, right, is an expression of that. So using your voice. Yeah.
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 And
So
so,
that's exciting to me. And and for me, I feel like the astrology chart will provide a map of sorts to
Mhm.
where those impasses are in a person's life, like where they are likely to constellate. And it
Mm,
will also provide clues to how you can positively respond to those places of impasse in ways that move you into a fuller expression of who you're meant to be. So that's like the really exciting part of, I love doing that with people. It's like
yeah.
it gets very real, those conversations get very real, and that's always fun. So
Let me reverse this back to you. And I am wondering how that journey has been for you, kind of reclaiming those pieces back in, as opposed to, when we give that authority to others. So claiming yourself back in, and you yourself mentioned before, like this feeling of coming out and expressing your own self. How has that been
yeah.
for you, and where are you now with that?
Well, that's a big topic, but I'll
I know,
I'll
I
take
know.
I, no, I'll take a stab at it. I'll start by saying that when I was 29 years old, which is right around the first Saturn return, which is a pivotal astrological event in everyone's life,
Mm,
it was when I had my first astrology reading with a professional astrologer.
mm,
And he looked at me at some point during the session and he said to me, um, you know, your life is really going to start at the age of 54. And I was like, kind of like my jaw dropped, because it was like, what? I'm 29. Like, but I can honor, I didn't know at the time what he was seeing in my chart. I know what he was seeing now. He was seeing that my progressed sun was going to make a movement into my first house over the ascendant. For astrologers will know what that means, but I don't know if it was his saying that to me that kind of inhibited me from stepping more fully into myself
mm.
earlier in life, or if it was just that he was very, very wise and he saw something that I couldn't. But it really did start to happen for me, like in my early 50s, around 50. I'm 57 now.
Mm.
A lot of things happened around that time, making decisions to start a new possibility, to partner with Lori in bringing our work out into the world in a much more public way,
Yeah,
in making a decision to shift my focus away from body work more into astrology and
yeah.
working with people at the level of their soul through the astrology lens. That all happened when I was 54. And what he was seeing was that, not that I wasn't living for those decades prior, though I will say, without going into all the details, there was a fair amount of wandering, like feeling a bit lost through those decades, endlessly searching to find my way, dealing with, very early childhood abuse and all of the things that,
Right.
the alcoholism in my family growing up, um, So I was working with all of that. Somehow in this moment in time now, I feel like the pieces have begun to weave together in a way that I'm finally figuring out who I am and what I want to be when I grow up. And, he also said to me in that session, you will be a late bloomer. And
Mm.
sure enough, I am a late bloomer. And, it's like we have our whole lifetime to become who we are. So I'm not ashamed of that. I'm actually can feel like a tremendous sense of relief and pride that I got here. That I'm and it's very new for me, Abby, like using my voice in a way to talk about what I care about and feeling that I have the right. I think people have been abused. It's like it's a very difficult thing to feel like you have the right to take up space
Mhm.
and feel that like your perspective, though it's only one perspective, it matters just as much as the next person's perspective, you know. And I think that's something, because of my own personal experience, like within our community, it's something I really stand for, like we all matter, like every person matters, you know. Lori and I hold the space, but I'm very interested in what each person brings to the space. And I think we all learn that way. I think that, and that comes back to what we were talking about at the beginning of like taking the power back to ourselves, like recognizing our power and not just always giving it away to the teacher or the professional or the doctor or the healer. Um, yeah. So that's, if that answers your question. It's kind of,
Yeah.
I
And
downloaded a lot.
well, it was a big question too, but I love what you say, because I feel so much the same. And I have to say, it's even if you don't come from abuse, there is a difficulty for so many of us to take space. And even if we don't, struggle with like, who am I compared to this person who's up there? Sometimes the comparison is just the person next to me, they do it better. So who am I to try to bring this thing forth? And so much hiding and shrinking. And I know it from my own journey. It's just amazing how challenging it is to truly value who I am. Um,
It's
and
curious. Yeah.
yeah,
No, go ahead. Finish that thought.
so I feel like that's a really big deal, to bring people out of hiding and to unleash one's own passion, so that like my passion, I keep saying that to people, but my passion can trump my need to hide. So if I can really, let that passion out and just be in that flow of that creativity of mine, or I really care about this. I really care about people coming out of hiding. And so
Yeah.
caring so much about it can be stronger than my need to hide and my insecurities and my, oh, I don't think, who am I to think that I can, dot, dot, dot. So I feel like what
Yeah.
you were saying is so important.
Yeah. And there's another piece to it too, is that like if I show myself and it isn't perfect, that, like the sky won't fall. Like it, like the earth will keep, orbiting around the sun. It's like this idea that we have to get it perfect. I mean,
Yeah.
that has plagued me. And Lori and I, we run this year-long mentorship program, and we ask, I mean, it's made up of practitioners. So these are people who are licensed to help other people and through their healing practices. But we ask each participant at the beginning of the year to identify this place in themselves that they want to focus on as a place of growth for the year.
Mhm.
We call it, alchemical term, the prima materia, the first matter, like the thing that's most gets our attention. And so many people identify some version of what you just said. Shrinking. There's things I want to say. There are ways in which I want to speak up. There are ways in which I want to be able to speak my truth, and I shrink back. I'm afraid to show myself. I'm afraid to have a voice. It's amazing how common it is. And I feel very curious about that. Like just to be ongoing in an ongoing way, just be interested, like, what is that about? And how do we create a culture where that could be different?
Mm,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that's a big conversation, but I think a lot of it has to do with creating a culture where people actually listen to one another and learn how to listen
yeah.
in a way that somebody, when they do share themselves, feels like, oh, someone's actually taking in who I am. I mean, that's like, I think 99% of healing work.
Yeah.
Like,
I think so too.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And the
yeah,
imperfection thing, or the perfectionism, is huge, and I feel like it's it's only through work and doing things anyway. For example, I will probably watch this recording later today, and I'm going to sit there and I'm going to see myself on the screen, and I'm going to judge myself a lot, and I'm going to say, oh, why did she make this face? Why did she say that? Why da 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 da? And my mind is going to do this thing because that's what it does. But there can be
right.
this other part of me which can say, look at her, she did that. And part of me that can say, good for you. And the part of me that can say, and I forgive myself for not being perfect.
Beautiful, Abby. Yeah, beautiful. And you have to watch it because you're the one who's posting it. I literally have gotten to the point where I'll do something like this. It's like, I'm not going to even watch it. Like, I don't want to even see myself. Like, the critical voices can be that strong.
Yeah.
But that's also changing for me,
Mhm.
because they're the parts that can be compassionate and kind. And just as you just said, are getting, their voice is getting louder. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So just to wrap it up, if you can, this might be too much to summarize, but if there was something that you wanted people to know on this path of kind of claiming themselves back and allowing themselves to be heard, what do you want to say to them?
Hmm. Well, this might sound religious, but I don't mean it in a religious way at all. I think what I would want to say is like what what I try to remember on a daily basis is that each one of us is truly an expression of the divine.
Mm,
Like our beingness is sacred. And sometimes I think our job is to reconnect and remember the sacredness of our being, you know. And there are lots of paths to doing that. There are lots of ways to do that. I mean, I think in essence, you could say that's what healing is about, like remembering that we're sacred beings,
yeah,
that our life has meaning and purpose, that we're here for a reason. And my way is to look to the cosmos, to look to the chart as to provide a map to guide people back to that remembering. Um, I think that's what I would want to say to wrap up. Yeah, yeah. I mean,
yeah,
it's my absolute privilege to be able to do that work with people on a
yeah,
on a regular basis. It's truly a privilege and very, very rewarding.
yeah,
And it's super exciting when like the light bulb goes off and someone gets another piece of the puzzle of themselves. It's just really exciting. And then outer change happens in their life. It's like the inner work leads to the outer change.
right.
That's yeah, that's what I would want to end with.
Yeah. And I can't agree with you more. And so beautifully said.
Mm,
And thank you
yeah.
so much for coming and sharing yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Abby. Thanks for having me. It's great. It's always good to talk with you. So, yeah, thanks.
And thank you, anybody who is watching. If you like what you heard, what you saw, please subscribe to the channel so that we can spread it and spread the love and the conversation. And I'm always happy if you want to comment and get in a conversation through comments. Conversation is the name of the game. And to learn more about a new possibility, the community that Benjamin and Lori have, I'm going to add a link at the bottom. And of course,
Right.
to learn more about my work and how I help women come out of hiding so that they can express their true self and their gifts in the world, follow the link below as well. And thank you.
Thanks, Abby.